guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ayreon Janae if you're new. So this video is just going to be about my personal statement and what got me into my NP program that I'm currently in now. And I just want to say I also go to the Ohio State University, and yeah, and I just finished my first semester, which was a success, so I'm happy about that, I should say. But yeah, so basically the requirements that I had to do to get me into my program that I'm currently in was to do an interview, write a purpose and goal statement, provide 3 references, professional references, and then I had to take some prereqs, and yeah, and that's got me to where I am today. So I am in a graduate entry program, and basically what a graduate entry program is, if you're not familiar, is so you get a bachelor's degree in any type of major, and then as you go forward, you at any moment decide that you want to become a nurse practitioner. And hey you guys, so I want to clear something up. For the graduate entry program, it's really a program where you get your RN license halfway through, and then you can become a certified nurse practitioner after the program is said and done. It kind of explains that you do get a bachelor's degree in anything prior to applying from undergrad, but the program itself is about halfway getting your RN and later getting your NP license and like your master's of science in nursing. So I just wanted to clear that up. And so with my major, my bachelor's was in health sciences, so I already basically had a health background in my major, so it wasn't really like a drastic decision to go into healthcare. I've always wanted to be a provider as well. First, I always wanted to be an OBGYN. That's where it started. And I would say that started back in high school. I thought about it and I was just like, oh, I want to be an OBGYN. I just love taking care of women, delivering babies, all the fun stuff with women's health. So I was just interested in that aspect of being an OBGYN and delivering babies and seeing the blessings that come out of it. So that was the exciting part. But then once I got to college, my undergrad year, I was taking biology, and I started to see how challenging it was to take all the classes that was required of me, and of the major I should say. And I just decided that it really wasn't for me. So then once I got to my junior year in undergrad, I decided to switch my major to health sciences. And then with that, I decided to go the PA route. And when I was taking biology, I was pre-med. So when I switched to health sciences, I decided to go pre-PA. I can't talk, sorry y'all. But yeah, pre-PA is what I decided to specialize in, with my major being health sciences. And so after that, I have finally graduated with my bachelor's degree back in 2020, December 2020. And I was looking at courses, and also I was a nurse's assistant during that time after I graduated. And one of now she's an NP now because she went to the same program as me, but she was a PCA at the time, and she told me about this program. So I was still kind of deciding. I know a lot of people would say PA and NP are kind of the same things. The only thing that's different is the PA is under supervision of a physician, and with an NP you're basically independent and you can have your own practice and everything. So I was still kind of deciding in between what I wanted to do between PA and NP. So when I looked at how many classes I was going to take versus the other, I ended up going the NP route. So here I am now. So the PA route was requiring 6 or 7 classes to be taken in prereqs before I can apply. But the program that I'm in now the program that I'm in now basically only required 5 prereqs, so it was way less. So I'm just like, I'm just gonna go the NP route. So that's basically what made up my decision. I always, like I said, I always knew I wanted to be a provider, and I always knew I wanted to work in healthcare, but I just didn't know like what route I wanted to go. Also, I love the autonomy of NP. I wanted to be able to make decisions for my patients, not have to depend on a provider to supervise my decisions, and be able to have my own way of caring for my patients. So that's basically why I ended up choosing NP. So back on track. So I took those classes. I kind of explained it in my last video, but it was anatomy and physiology, pharmacology, microbiology, and human nutrition. So like I said before, I already taken human nutrition for my bachelor's in health sciences, so I just needed to take anatomy and physiology again, because I did not do well after the 3 times that I took it at OSU. It just wasn't for me at that school, so I ended up taking it at Columbus State, and it was way better. So I took it there, and then I also took pharmacology and microbiology at Columbus State, and like I can't complain. I did really well in those classes. I have like professors that was able to basically work with me closer. You know that at OSU it can kind of be a challenge to work with professors because the college is so big, but they do work with you. My professor in anatomy, I did meet with her a lot when I was taking her classes the last time I took it at OSU, but I don't know, for some reason I just wasn't getting it, and it was just kind of a challenge for me. So like I said, I took it at Columbus State Community College, and now I'm here. Now I was able to apply. So just to move on to a personal statement so I don't get sidetracked, it was just like a difficult thing is writing for me. I really have a hard time writing personal statement. When that came up in that time period when I was getting ready to apply, I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is just gonna be a challenge for me. Oops, sorry y'all. It's gonna be a challenge for me because it's just like my writing skills just isn't up to par, and I hated that I had to keep like getting it looked over, but I needed to do that in order to get it perfected so that I can submit it with my application. So here's the questions that we had to answer in our personal and purpose and goal statement. So it says, what specifically are your academic and career goals? How did you decide to seek graduate education in this specialty area? How do your personal attributes and life experiences relate to your potential as a master's degree prepared nurse and or advanced practice nurse in your selected specialty? And lastly, how do you see yourself as a leader and advocate for patients in your future practice setting? So those were the questions that they asked us to answer in our personal statement, and it only had to be, it shouldn't have not exceeded 3 pages, and it could be single space, 12.5, you know, So now to reading my personal statement and saying what basically got me into my school. So here it is. Stop eating all that salt, a family member told me. So basically with my first sentence, I basically tried to draw the reader in or the audience in, because with me eating all the salt, like they'll see why I said that in the beginning. And I don't know if I also, sorry, just to interrupt real quick, I don't know if I told you guys, but my specialty is women's health. I did say a little bit about why I wanted to go into women's health, like earlier in this video, not too long ago, but yes, my specialty is women's health as well. So me saying like stop eating all that salt from a family member because a family member told me that, I'm gonna draw the reader in by explaining why. So At the beginning of my pregnancy, I craved Slim Jim beef jerky sticks. I had to have them every day and night, but did not realize how much sodium I was consuming during my pregnancy. To fast forward, at 35 weeks pregnant, my fiance rushed me to the hospital as I thought I may have been experiencing contractions, but otherwise felt completely fine. After I waited in the emergency waiting room for almost an hour, I was finally called back into the labor and delivery triage room where the nurses started my intake process, which included taking mine and my baby's vitals. As the doctor monitored our vitals, it appeared to her that not only was I experiencing contractions, but hypertension as well. Before pregnancy, I never experienced hypertension. So that's basically the beginning of my story, and then it continues. So after being provided medication twice to bring my blood pressure down, it continued to be elevated. And my blood pressure, just to give you guys it's not in my personal statement, but to give you guys like a glimpse of what it was, it's probably like most likely like a 160/110. That's what it approximately was. I don't really remember because it was 2 years ago, or yeah, about 2 years ago basically. So I don't really remember, but 160/110 was really high for me at that time so yeah. But the empathetic doctor walked in to inform me that I had been diagnosed with gestational hypertension. After begging for another chance after begging for another chance for my blood pressure to become normal, I was informed that the safest alternative was induction. I've never been so frightened and unprepared in my entire life, as I have heard various stories about childbirth and how with complications it can be life-threatening. I had a lot of thoughts going through my head on whether I was going to make it or not through labor. I was transferred to a labor and delivery room where I was given the epidural. Unfortunately, this medication caused my blood pressure to drop to 66/50, kind of bout, which caused the doctors to lessen the amount of medication I was given. Despite these health complications, the assigned nurses made my stay and laboring process as comfortable as possible. The positive reassurance they provided me was heartwarming and meant a lot to me. After 48 hours, I was able to give birth to a precious and handsome baby boy on December 29th, 2019. I knew that this couldn't have been possible without the help of the nurses taking care of me and being there to keep me calm in this traumatic time. So that basically ends my story right there. And I basically just gave a visual on my story, drew them in to what I went through during my labor and delivery experience, and basically the complications that I had and how it motivated me to want to go into women's health myself. So that was my story. So then to continue, I found an article from the CDC, and it was basically giving us statistics on Black women and the complications that I had and what Black women are more susceptible to going throughout their pregnancy or before they are giving birth and after birth. So to continue, according to CDC, between 2014 to 2017, non-Hispanic Black women had the highest occurrence of death from pregnancy-related and childbirth-related complications with comparison to other women of different ethnic backgrounds. Based on statistics, there were 41.7 deaths per 100,000 live births delivered by non-Hispanic Black women. To continue, the factors that may have contributed to these statistics could be due to lack of access to qualitative care, the prevalence of chronic diseases, structural racism, and implicit bias. And then I put in parentheses where I got my source from. or my research from, basically. So to continue after that, as an African American woman, this is something that is alarming and eye-opening. With the successful completion of a Master of Science degree in nursing, it will enable my ability to reach a deeper level of understanding pertaining to women's health. My goal is to reduce the prevalence of health complications within women and maternal health by teaching women how to properly care for themselves holistically. I will teach women what is safe and not safe gynecologically and maternally. I will ensure that I am providing women with great qualitative and affordable care. My goal is not only to help women in marginalized communities, but to help every woman equally, no matter their race nor ethnicity. So basically this paragraph was basically stating, like, adding evidence and support to why I chose women's health. Basically stating the statistics help to make them understand how critical it is for Black women and maternal health, and trying to stay healthy during that time and give birth and stay healthy afterwards. And for me, I was one of those people that was a part of that statistic of having health complications. Luckily, I made it through, and I'm still here today. My son is 2 years old and he's healthy. So yeah, that was basically my snippet of like the reason for why I wanted to pursue the specialty area that I wanted to pursue. So to move on, working as a patient care associate in the float pool department at The Ohio State University, I have had experiences in caring for patients on a variety of units. These various units included medical, surgical, emergency department, labor and delivery and postpartum, neuropsychiatric, geriatrics, and more. Out of all of the units that I have floated to, I realized that I was mainly interested in the labor and delivery and postpartum unit. Provided I am a woman of color and have experienced health problems during the childbirth of my 1-year-old son, at the time he was 1, it has always been in my interest to reach a deeper level of understanding within the gynecological aspect of women's health as well as obstetrics. I have always been very cognitive of the way in which I care for myself. Therefore, I enjoy educating myself through work experiences and healthcare professionals. So I basically gave a little snippet of my work experience as a nurse assistant or patient care associate, as they would call it at The Ohio State University. So like I said, I float everywhere in the hospital. It's not one unit that I work on. I just basically said what interests me from working as a float pool PCA, floating to different units, seeing everything different in the hospital, working with different type of patients. That really helped me to become very versatile and understand the difference in different specialty areas. And the one that resonated with me was women's health. So to continue, as a member of the float pool working on the postpartum floor, one of my responsibilities was to gather the patient's medical condition reports and describe the up-to-date status of each patient under my care to the medical staff at the end of my shift. In addition to my role of watching over the conditional statuses of my patients, I also assisted them in going to and while in the restroom a few times after they had given birth. I completed rounds and obtained vitals, including blood sugars, and recorded the intake output of what my patients were eating and drinking, as well as how much output they had after using the restroom. I also charted the specifics and communicated with nurses via electronic medical records regarding the statuses of our patient. While rounding, I also had the opportunity of meeting and talking to the mothers and getting to know them personally while taking their vitals. I was always interested in hearing my patients' stories and their backgrounds, as it helped me understand who they were and where they come from. Specifically, I've spoken with mothers of various backgrounds and ethnicities. I have also had the opportunity of sitting with my patients one-on-one for safety purposes. Lastly, paying close attention during doctor to nurse, nurse to nurse, and nurse to PCA reports has contributed to my education within women's health while working on this floor. So basically, in this paragraph, obviously I was just stating like what my duties were as a PCA on the labor and delivery unit and postpartum unit. Mostly, I'd never really been on the labor and delivery unit. It was always mostly postpartum. But when I was on that unit, working on that unit, doing roundings and everything, I was just explaining like what I had to do, you know, the things that I may have had to chart, just, you know, summing that all together. So then after working as a PCA at OSU, I transitioned into a research assistant position at Women's Health. It is involved in research pertaining to medications that have not yet been approved by the FDA to be sold in the market. I've also learned so much about the studies that I have partaken in currently. I am participating in a few studies which include endometriosis, birth control, menopause, female sexual arousal disorder, and a multi-cancer study. After reading the protocols for every study, I have expanded my knowledge on women's health. The protocols of the studies spend time explaining the health conditions that they are working to treat. It first explains the health condition, lists the signs and symptoms, explains the medications that they are studying and how it can help the patient, and more. When participating in a study, it is pertinent to know the inclusions and exclusions when recruiting patients for the studies, because the medications that are still being studied could be detrimental to a patient's life. I've learned so much from the inclusion and exclusions because it also spends time explaining the health conditions that are excluded. My responsibilities are to have the patient read consent before the research coordinator comes in the room and reviews it with them. Listen to the coordinator while she interviews them to see if they meet, he or she, I should say, interviews them to see if they meet criteria to be in the study. I obtain vitals and specimens, then process those specimens using a centrifuge and pipettes to prepare and send off for lab interpretation. I also observe the OBGYN physician, who is the principal investigator of the studies, perform pap smears, transvaginal ultrasounds, colposcopies, and more. I have really enjoyed women's health research, as this experience has provided me with additional knowledge upon women's health thus far. So that basically explains my research experience, because I do have some research experience, and that's why I chose to go there to do research, because I knew that it could also enhance my application and the experience that I have. It makes me look good, as well as since I was a nurse assistant and going into research, now I'm back a nurse's assistant until I get my RN halfway through the program. But that was basically a little snippet of my research experience when I was working at my research job. So to continue, as a prepared nurse and advanced practice nurse, I plan to open my own women's health practice and provide females with opportunities to receive care affordably. I will ensure that every patient that walks into my practice is comfortable and respected. My goal is to start a nonprofit organization, free clinic, where patients can receive checkup appointments at no cost from certified medical professionals who love to volunteer in their free time. Another goal is to work towards improving healthcare for as many patients as I can holistically. Lastly, I plan to share my personal story and knowledge from past experiences to assist in providing preventative care. So with this paragraph, I'm basically stating what I plan to do once I am certified as a women's health nurse practitioner, and what I plan to do to give back to my community, and that is to start a free clinic. And I do want people that are providers who love to volunteer, who want to make a difference in their community as well, to join me in doing free wellness exam on patients who may not be able to afford it, or patients who may not be insured and really need to be checked up, or people that are most likely at a disadvantage. Basically, I want to help those people in keeping their health in good health. So that's basically that. So that's still my goal. So yeah, so lastly, I wrote a conclusion paragraph. So in conclusion, my personal, academic, and healthcare related professional experiences have prepared me to enroll in and graduate from graduate level nursing education for women's health. I've been very fortunate to experience as much as I have, as it made me the woman I am today, and will contribute to my success as an advanced practice nurse. Based on these past experiences, I believe that I have attained the necessary skills and knowledge as an ideal candidate to be admitted into the Ohio State University graduate entry program to become a women's health nurse practitioner to educate and care for women from all backgrounds of health. So that basically sums it up. And like I said, just to go back to the questions that was asked of us to answer in our purpose and goal statement. What are your academic and career goals? That is to become a nurse practitioner in women's health. So that was basically my academic and career goals, to stay grounded in my studies, and that's basically that. And how did I seek graduate education in this specialty area? That was from my story, basically saying what I went through, providing articles on what women of color like me go through with complications in pregnancy, and then personal attributes and life experiences related to your potential as a master's degree prepared nurse and or advanced practice nurse in your selected specialty. So the personal attributes and life experiences were my experience, my story again. My personal attributes is what I plan to do after I graduate and get my certification in women's health to be a nurse practitioner. And then also, how do you see yourself as a leader and advocate for patients in your future? So like I said, that also goes into my goals and what I plan to do after I get my certification. So I feel like I've answered all of these questions that was asked of me in my requirements for grad school. So that was basically that. But like I said, I really struggled with this. I looked up a lot of YouTube videos on how I can better write a personal statement. So that was basically that. But I'm so excited. I know that you guys may have the same issues with writing personal statements, so I really resonate with you guys. But that was just to give you guys my snippet on what I wrote and what helped me get into my program. If you have any questions, just be sure to put them in the comments, and I will be sure to answer them as best as I can. I'm not really like a good writer. I had a lot of help along the way to submitting it. So like I said, I can try to answer them as much as I can. But until then, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye.